How's it going? It's your pal Mike Squires, and this is the Couchers Podcast, episode number 241. And my guest, super talented guy, Adam Johnson. You may know him from his social media accounts, where he lists himself as Adam Patrick Johnson, his full name, because he thinks that his name is too common. But I've never met an Adam Johnson before. But I like the three-name serial killer approach. That's good. It's memorable, isn't it? Adam was recently in a Couchers video, which is not his greatest accomplishment, but he killed it. Speaking of being a serial killer, he nailed all the awesome high singing and working for the weekend. Turns out his cover band does that song, so he knows it inside and out. You can find him at adampatrickjohnson.com. He's a content creator, coach, and has a cool and interesting history, I think. And I intend on taking a deep dive into his YouTube channel, Cover Band Confidential, just to get some advice and maybe look at things a little differently, because it's pretty easy to think that we all got it figured out. And there's always, you can't learn what you think you already know. It was a real pleasure to talk to Adam here. I wish I would have paced it a little better because he has so much going on. I wish I could have gotten into all of it. But I very, very much encourage you to follow him and go check out his YouTube channel and subscribe, because it's great, like I do. So thank you, Adam, for stopping by. You're a killer. You're rad. Thank you for listening and watching. If you're enjoying the Couchers Podcast, by all means, this is your personal invitation to support us on Patreon. We could use your help. We are constantly trying to improve, make this better. There are some plans in the very near future. We'll be doubling down on our energy focused on doing the podcast and different versions of the cover performances. So again, I'm not into begging or anything, but I encourage you, if you were enjoying this and you want to see it grow, and if you want to see it grow in all the ways, like if you want to see the content improve, please get over there. Patreon.com/Couchers. I appreciate everyone who's already contributing there. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank Variety Coffee Roasters, my friends, Variety Coffee Roasters in Brooklyn, New York. I'm actually enjoying some variety right now as we speak. It's morning time and I'm doing it. Always. Every single morning I drink Variety Coffee. Why? Because it's killer. Why would I recommend it to you? Because I use it. That's the kind of thing that I'm always going to want to recommend to you. How can I recommend something I don't enjoy myself? You can find Variety Coffee, a number of locations in Brooklyn and throughout the city of Manhattan. And you can find them at varietycoffeeroasters.com, at Variety Coffee Roasters on social media. I encourage you to follow them. Follow them. Go check out their subscription service, buy some coffee, click a couple buttons, and they'll send it right over as often as you want. You'll never run out of coffee. How great is that? I hate running out of coffee. Thank you, Variety Coffee Roasters. I love you guys. That's it. We're going to get into it. I hope you guys enjoy this. I very much did. We had a fun, casual conversation. And don't forget the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't be an asshole. The platform that you use, did it count down from 5? Because mine is a real a drummer.
It doesn't. Yeah, no, the Zencastr is pretty bare bones.
Did it count down?
It doesn't. You just hit the button and it turns red, and that's it.
Wow.
I'm not. It has definitely borked a bunch of really good conversations. So we actually don't use it unless I absolutely have to. Normally, it's just like we rig it up in OBS.
Right. This has been mostly pretty good. I have had some issues where I had to do a bunch of extra editing.
Mm-hmm.
I got into this because I wanted to do less editing.
Exactly.
I'm willing to pay more to work less.
Indeed.
It's funny.
That's what we use Descript, which is really good about that. It'll cut out like filler words like and you can close word gaps and stuff,
Really?
and it transcribes everything. It's sick.
That's some Terminator type shit.
It's very much, yeah, it's fairly Skynet, but it allows us to do an episode and release it like within an hour. So you just run like 2 things through it and it's good to go.
And it's pretty clean edits. There's no like.
I mean, if you do start doing filler words, it gets real tricky because we say things like, and then we keep talking and we say anyway, like those kinds of things. I say like too much. That's a personal thing that I'm aware of, unfortunately. But word gaps are really good because like you get that weird like transition thing when you're changing subjects
Right.
with a person you're not in the same room with.
Here, this is a great opening question. I've obviously things like that where I stop myself in the middle of a question. Those things I haven't corrected.
Mhm.
However, because I have to listen to every one of these episodes and I have to hear how, I have to listen to myself objectively.
Mhm.
Sometimes
That's
you have to
tough.
just accept yourself and love yourself for who you are. And sometimes you
true.
have to say, dude, you need to stop saying so much.
It's a challenge, especially when you're just talking casually, which hopefully, if you're doing these kinds of things regularly, it feels fairly natural, you know?
Right. Do you catch yourself? I mean, obviously, you pointed out the couple of bad verbal habits that you have.
Mhm.
You catch
I don't know.
yourself? Do you go back and?
Sometimes I may, if I have the time and the margin, I'll cut myself up so I sound better. But most of the time, I don't have that luxury. Now, with like, if I'm doing like scripted stuff, it's torture because it's
Right.
just like you got to get through. I've got these 3 sentences I've got to say before looking at something, so you do them however many times you got to do them. But I've learned some fun tricks. You
Right.
know, some guy who is an editor recommended like one of these pet clickers. So if you screw up while you're doing an edit, and because it sets such a specific sound wave, you can edit clips out without having to listen to them because you just look for every time that waveform shows up.
Oh, clever.
It's pretty clever.
That.
Yeah.
That's good. Wow.
Now with the transcription software that we use, because it's word based, you can search for things. So we just have a word that we say like when somebody screws up, and we wouldn't normally say it on the episode. So if you screw up, you say eggplant, and then when it's done, you just type the word eggplant in, and it goes to all the places that you need to cut out.
Wow.
Dude.
AI. Huh? This is the future.
It's wild, man.
Do you think you'll have the opportunity to travel to space in your lifetime?
I don't think I want to. I mean,
you don't want to?
I'm sure I could. Nah.
Really?
I don't know if there's anything up there that like I'm like an airsick, seasick guy. So
No.
the idea of like strapping myself to a rocket, flying into space, I feel like it's you know what? I feel like going to space is kind of like playing a show because the entire day is around the show, but everything but the show is just the pain in the ass that you got to do in order to get to the fun part. I feel like that's probably what space is like because you got to strap yourself in and it's like probably super traumatic. And then you get to float for however long you get to float, but then it's all over.
Well, if tourist space travel is anything like the sci-fi movies where people are prepping to go to space, there's a lot of bullshit involved, like tumbling ass over tea kettle underwater, being bounced around in some kind of fake skydiving tube.
And they got to spin you in the centrifuge. You got to get used to the G forces.
Right. Here's what I'm into, though. I'm into The View.
Oh yeah?
Don't you? I mean, not the show.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about The View from space.
I was really surprised that, like, man, this conversation took a turn. I get that.
I think
like that moonrise, or I'm sorry, Earthrise from the Apollo missions, where they were on the moon watching the Earth come up. Like,
yeah, dude,
that's like humanity. Like, that's wild.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
that part
down.
would be cool. I'm not sure personally if the juice is worth the squeeze for me. That's all. I don't want to have to get in the thing and spin around and, you know, float in the air. Or like,
This
I
is
just
the
want to do.
second
I just
time
want to do the fun
someone
part.
has said that to me today, and I'm so into it. Is this a new thing? Why am I only just hearing it? The juice and the squeeze thing.
Oh, I don't know. That was you know, you get these little phrases from people as you kind of go through life, and yeah, juice ain't worth the squeeze is just a, I don't know. I've been saying it for a while. But I picked up from somebody else. I heard somebody say it, and I'm like, that's pretty funny. I'll just, you know, I'll take that in.
This
This now becomes
experience
a part of my personality.
reaffirms my love for that phrase. It's great.
It's great. Fantastic.
You're great.
You're sweet.
Great.
It's kind of you to say that.
No, it's not.
I don't, you know, I mean, I feel like we don't, like, men are not accustomed to getting compliments. It's not a thing that we are like conditioned to accept.
Well, it's also, especially, how old are you?
I'm 41.
Right. So you're like Gen, whatever it is. I don't know what comes after me.
I think the correct term is Oregon Trail millennial.
So I'm Gen X.
I heard that somewhere.
Your generation is better than mine with these sorts of things, but you know, I grew up not even like you don't even give another guy a compliment. Otherwise, maybe you're queer.
There was
and I'm like, maybe I am.
We, you know, I went to school in the 90s. There was plenty of that crap back then too. So,
I think you should be able to compliment anyone you like.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think we all feel better when I say something nice to somebody and they kind of like light up. That makes me feel good also. You know, it's just, let's spread positivity. Let's try and like build each other up. I talk a lot about like having an abundance mindset. So, right. You know, when you're in a competitive world, like you and I have podcasts that cover roughly the same topic.
Sure.
But I want to talk to you. I want to be a part of that, because to me, if anybody's talking about this stuff, that's a good thing. That's a net positive. And there's plenty enough for all of us. I mean, you're at over 250 episodes. We're over 250 episodes. We've covered a lot of stuff.
250 episodes.
255 as of last week.
Wow. This will be 241 for me. So you're ahead of me.
Yeah.
Nice.
We may have got, it sounds like we got like a month and a half lead time on you.
Very nice.
I mean, you have to be willing to make it's a marathon, you know, you just got to be willing to keep running.
That's it. Someone told me that early on. They were like, whatever it is that you're doing, even though it sucks right now, just keep doing it. And you'll either get better at it and you'll continue getting better, or you'll realize it's not for you. But do it for long enough to know the difference and,
for sure,
you know, allow yourself that. But let's just rewind, you know, let's rewind 30 years.
Okay.
When did you start to play music? And did you grow up in a musical house?
So my parents were music fans. Neither of my parents played an instrument, but they sang in choirs and stuff growing up. My sister, who is 4 years older than I am, was very involved in performing arts. And so music was a thing that I was definitely subjected to. But if we're going like back 30 years, I'm like 9.5, maybe a little longer, further than 30. 9.5, and I've got MTV on in the background, and the Pound Cake video comes on. And in that moment, I see Eddie Van Halen playing a guitar with a drill, and I was like, I think I want to do that.
I love that it's Pound Cake. I love that it's like Sammy era that captured you.
I'm a product of my environment. It was the media that was consumable, you know? Now, I mean, we all go back. I mean, Dave era Van Halen is like insane, but I feel like because I don't have the the like lived experience of like watching the arc of Van Halen, I can look at both eras and appreciate them, for
And
their
that was your
merits.
point of entry. Like that's
Yeah.
killer. Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it was that, and the first full song I ever learned was Ugly Kid Joe's version of Cats in the Cradle,
Is that
because
right?
that was what was on the radio when I was that age.
I love that.
First song I ever played in public.
I think I just found my clip, my first clip.
Oh, I know mine's out there somewhere. Lord help us.
That is awesome. Do you have I mean, it was pretty accessible to record in video things at that point. Do you have footage of you from this period?
I think so. I guarantee you somewhere my parents have a VHS of me playing this thing, because it was at like a church talent show, and I was like 11 or 12. Because I started taking lessons when I was 10.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm clocking 31 years at this point.
Was there any element of, the rest of that record is pretty raucous and there's a lot of other themes. That song is a deep song. It's got, it's cool.
Yeah.
The rest of the album?
Yeah, my dad just dug that it was like a Cat Stevens song. He was like, my kids listen to Cat Stevens.
Right.
I'm sorry, not Cat Stevens.
Harry Chapin.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. Cut
That's
that
all
out.
right. No,
Nobody needs to hear that.
I've left worse things in.
It's true.
So okay, that's awesome. Do you remember? And so you weren't in school band or anything like that. You didn't play the horn.
No, I was. I started playing trumpet in 4th grade, and I did that all through middle school. I was doing like, band. I was in honor band, and first chair, third trumpet, which is kind of like, yeah, it's a distinction of not much distinction. But at some point, guitar just kind of took over, because while I was also getting familiar with like my musical tastes and my sensibilities, grunge explodes. And not only, a lot of people talk about the punk revolution, where there was this entire generation of kids who didn't fit in, who had very accessible entry points into the music that they liked. And grunge was very much that entry point for me, because some of the songs were super technical, a lot of them weren't, and so I could pick up a song and figure it out over the course of a couple of hours.
There's a wide gap in musicality between Soundgarden and Nirvana or Mudhoney.
There is, but like, yeah, I got really into Pearl Jam. Was like my first, like, I got really into those first 2 albums, but Nirvana was huge. Because again, I was like 11 or 12, 13, kind of as they were kind of cresting. So that, yeah, when Kurt died, that was as a 7th grade kid, that's pretty big, especially when, that's the soundtrack of your life. It's
right.
Pretty jarring stuff. So
yeah, probably devastating. A lot of kids at school crying that day. I'm certain.
It was, yeah, just, it's bizarre to think about those kinds of things, because again, we don't deal with mortality very much at that age. You got to kind of, you find those hard truths out later on. But I don't know. I think it was in the right time, I guess, because all this really traumatic shit kind of happened.
Here's a question that I've never asked a person that was still in school when that happened. When I was a kid, when I was going to school, few times, there were kids at my school that died, and they would hold assemblies, and we talked about it. It was like strangely progressive. It was way off brand for the weird little town that I grew up in, which was pretty conservative.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the like authority figures at school, or teachers or counselors, or anyone talking to kids? Because that's suicide is a much bigger topic now, but back then it was just like, he was a doper.
Yeah, no, I don't feel like we got any sort of address, like they didn't address that school wide. It was just, it's probably worse then, because just kids like bouncing stories back and forth. I mean, it got pretty outlandish as the as the day progressed, but
Like the game Telephone.
yeah, for sure. So I feel like it definitely kind of informed, my view of the world to a degree. And I just recently finished Dave Grohl's book, The Storyteller, and he kind of covers, that season of his life and what, the aftermath of that whole thing was like. And it's really interesting to hear that from like a person who is there, who is, on the inside for the most part.
Right. I'm going to check that out.
It's really good. Get the audiobook. It's
That's been
good.
my jam lately, audiobooks, just because I'm in the
yeah.
car so much. It's almost
Get the Audible, go for a walk.
If he wasn't such a nice guy, and who's actually been like kind to me a number of times, I would be annoyed by how everything he does just like works out. Like he's good at every. I mean that he's good at everything he does, or at least he does not present the things he's not great at.
Right. He's the master of his domain.
What do you think he sucks at?
I'm sure he sucks at lots of things. It's probably stuff that like you and I would be like really confused or surprised by.
Like maybe he's terrible at putting together IKEA furniture.
Right. Or loading a dishwasher.
Right.
Or folding laundry. Like it's those things. You're like, really? You can't do this? My wife is a very competent person, but like I do the laundry in our house because I like folding things a certain way, and that's what I would prefer. So I'll just do everybody's laundry to get that, part of me satisfied.
What do you think that's about?
Anyway, no, I feel like, I mean, musicians as a brand, as a breed, we are just kind of exercising our trauma, for the entertainment of other people. The concept, like if you looked at what we were doing objectively, we spend years and years learning a craft and, perfecting our execution to get validation from strangers
and less than minimum wage. After.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If you're lucky, you get paid at all.
Right.
It's wild. But yeah, I mean, that is what we're doing. We're just trading.
Imagine being a comedian, because a lot of comedians I know come from, they come from a place that's like pretty dark, and that's the way that they're working it out, like through the laughter of strangers.
It's like, that's Mark Maron. Like, I love hearing him talk about that stuff, because it is so like he's so blatantly open. Like, yes, this is my neuroses, and this is the thing that is fueling, my career. And that's why a lot of these, it's the same with musicians. They worry about getting help because maybe they'll lose their creative edge,
Right.
Maybe their trauma is the thing that works, but like in reality, it's not a great way to go about things.
I can tell you that I'm a better guitar player and bass player sober. I'm definitely a better singer sober.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've been having a very serious conversation with myself about what value alcohol brings, because I think we've all been in a situation where it's been this great social lubricant, and we've had these wonderful shows and things were really great. And we've also had other ones where maybe we thought things were fine, but then you wake up the next day and you're like, oof, people are mad at you.
Right.
And you have to, figure all of that stuff out. So, it is it's tough, but it's so pervasive,
right,
in this industry.
Well,
I played last night.
It's the one currency you can be guaranteed on that night.
Yeah. Like I got, we loaded in whatever we did. And, the first thing you walk back there is 3 cases of beer. I mean, for 5 people for, the next hour and a half.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But we just accept it. That's just, it's normal.
Why wouldn't you? Let's talk about young Adam again. So What do you think that moment at school were you already playing guitar when Kurt died?
Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
was extra impactful.
Yeah. So yeah, I was very entrenched in their music, but also just music in general. So, but I was also, you think about that era, and there was, the bands at the top of the heap, your Soundgardens, your Nirvana and Alice in Chains, and it's very dark music, and you're ingesting this really heavy material at a young age and not fully understanding what it is. But I feel like, again, that I am a product of that, that kind of mentality, because it was something I consumed a lot, and held in deep regard.
The interesting difference between grunge and punk and your sort of like middle of the road rock and roll. All rock and roll songs are about sex and drugs,
Hmm.
right? Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky, maybe a car.
One in 100.
Yeah.
And then grunge came and it was sexless. It was pretty
Hmm.
much only about drugs.
Yeah.
It was it was pretty wild, but as a kid, you're kind of, you know, you're ignorant to that because
Yeah.
and unless you
No,
depending
and
on
I
how you
was,
grew up.
yeah, I was not that kid.
Yeah.
I was one of those. I was very by the book. I was well behaved, raised in church. My mom is the secretary of the church that I grew up in, like church. And so yeah, I was very much a rule follower. I didn't drink, smoke, or chew, or hang out with people who do.
Right.
I was a straight laced kid.
Good for you. How did you do in school? Were you a good student?
Uh, for the most part, I knew that I was going to get an A in chorus, which was going to make up for the C I was probably going to get in math. So it all kind of leveled out. But school wasn't like I didn't really sweat school very much.
Right.
It was just kind of, you showed up, and that wasn't whatever I was doing was enough to kind of get through it without breaking a sweat.
A lot of folks that I talk to, they got their first guitar in middle school or high school, and
Hmm.
everything just sort of took a nosedive at that moment in as far as their studying went,
Yeah.
myself included.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I definitely, I was at that point in my life, I was playing 2-3 hours a day because I had the spare time. Now I wasn't a super fit kid. I sat in my bedroom
Sure.
and just, worked it out. But yeah, no, I don't think it ever adversely affected anything to that effect.
Yeah. Did you said you were a pretty straight-laced kid and you didn't hang out with any roustabouts.
Miscreants, yeah. I didn't meet any of those guys until I started actually playing out.
Did you have a band of nice boys that you played with in high school?
Yes, there was a band that I put together in my church youth group, and we
Awesome.
played our own. We played original songs that I wrote, and you know, it wasn't too bad. There
Was
was
it
like
a
a handful
Christian
of other.
band?
Yes, as deep and as thoughtful as a 16-year-old suburban kid could be.
Right. There's a
But like
built-in
I listen
audience
back
with
to those.
that. There's a
Yeah,
there's a real benefit of being in a Christian band that maybe Christian bands take for granted.
I can say that we, as a person who toured in one later on, we didn't. We were very aware that, at a certain level of quote unquote prominence, you had a built-in economy to like sustain your group that a lot of other groups don't have. Like we could go in and do like a weekend thing at a church and get paid like professional money to do those events, and a lot of folks weren't able to do that kind of thing. But it also came with its own set of hassles. You've got people, kind of being very aware of your personal life and have things to say about it, and it gets real dicey when you have people telling you to take your wedding ring off when you're playing at a youth event, That's a whole other thing that yeah, it gets weird.
What?
Yeah,
That's
that
weird.
happened. That happened. There was
Is
this
that a
whole
story
thing
that
like
you
they
can
don't want people
share?
to know that you're attached, which is like super weird to say right before you play, at an event that's probably got a bunch of, freshmen or middle school kids at it. Because we were playing like pop punk music. It was like light
Right.
and airy stuff. It wasn't like, I mean, those were the people we were playing for. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, wait, what? No. Yeah, it was weird.
Did you I have a friend, Leif Anderson, who's got a great podcast called Let's Get High and Read the Bible.
Mm,
And he grew up homeschooled, um, hardcore fundamentalist,
yeah.
um, evangelizing, traveling internationally, like building homes, like really living it, like like
Yeah.
real deal, not a lot, not like this fake stuff that is happening in a lot of, unfortunately. Anyway, he talks about a lot of crazy, and he eventually toured in some Christian bands, and he said he saw crazy bad behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
There was no distinction.
right.
The running joke, I'm from the South, so you're going to get a lot of a lot of that. But it's the joke is why do you always take two Baptists with you on a fishing trip? And the joke is if you only take one of them, they'll drink all your beer. That's very much what it was like.
Right.
It was happening, but people are being, I guess, more clever about it, I suppose.
Right. Policing, self-policing.
Yeah.
Are you still involved in the church?
I'm an attender, and I do play in some at some places in the area because it's good money down here
Right.
playing worship sets.
I wish I could
And
find
I
a
think
worship band up here to play with, but
yeah, I mean it's a fun kind of it's a certain lane to operate in, and you get to pull out a bunch of fun pedals and make more noise than you normally would be accustomed to. It's less notes but more noise.
what
Lots of
is that
ambient
gig
stuff.
like? Can you read music?
I like if you gave me like charts, I could get there, but typically you get the songs, I don't know, a couple of weeks ahead of time. You just have to have good solid ear training. You might get a chart, but if you're playing like lead stuff, you just have to pick it out.
Right.
Just listen to what the record's doing. Maybe search YouTube and you'll luck out and get somebody who's kind of done the hard work for you, and you just have to replicate it or find a kind of in lane performance.
And are they contemporary hymns that are brought up to date, or are they like
For,
new?
yeah, no, it's mostly new stuff. So, I mean, that's a whole industry.
Right.
I went to school in Nashville, and the contemporary Christian music market is massive.
Right.
And for the most part, they're 3 to 5 years behind everybody else. So, in the middle 2000s, like they were just doing stuff where everything sounded like U2, just dotted eighth notes, lots of washy reverbs, and
Right.
that kind of thing. And so, yeah, and you have this entire population of musicians who are making good paydays, once or twice a week. And so I feel like there's this kind of insular worship guitar world where it's got its own kind of culture and, preferences and that kind of thing. The whole boots and boards thing, that's a worship guitar kind of thing that happened for a while, where it was just some hipster worship guitar player with a pair of, whatever boots he had, and his 40-foot wide pedal board
Right.
with his 6 Strymons on it,
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, there are a number of companies around that I think capitalize on that. Good for them, is
I
what
mean,
I say.
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you got to niche down, you got to find your market. And that is a very huge market, as far as if you're slicing the pie, it may not be a big slice, but it's a lucrative one.
So tell me about putting together your youth group band and your first gig. Like I want to hear about your first gig and what did that feel like? All of the feelings. Tell me about all your
Yeah.
feelings.
So it was a thing where they were like, you play and we'll just do these praise songs. And so we did that, and then there was like three of us who were like, I mean, this is fine, but like, why don't we get together Sunday afternoon and plug in and just kind of see what happens. And it, I started bringing songs in. Like I was writing songs at that point. Um, it had some kind of, I guess, sensibility of structure and that kind of thing, where I inevitably put together, 10 to 15 songs, and we could play a set. And it was probably something that was like after a youth group event. So, 15, 16 years old, and you've got a built-in audience. You've got, for all intents and purposes, a captive audience. They just have to stand there. And,
Right.
I, I don't, I very rarely feel like I get the luxury of being fully present in the moment, because I always feel like, as a guitar player who sings, there's just too many things to worry about. And so I don't feel like, a lot of times, I'm more than 3 inches in front of my face at any given moment.
Right.
And even on nights where, you haven't had a drop to drink, you go at the end of the night, and there's like chunks of your night that you're just like, wait, we played that? I don't remember. Like, I have no recollection of it, because again, there's too many things to worry about in the moment. And I've got ADHD, so my memory's terrible on top of it. So,
Right.
but I definitely, like, I feel like that first show was probably me being super comfortable with the level of anxiety that I was willing to put myself into in order to get the thing that I was trying to get out of it. And I don't think I ever got over that. I just, there's a certain acceptable level of anxiety that I'm willing to put myself into.
Did the show go well?
I mean, I think so. No, you know what? I overdid it, because I was, as a singer, I was not very versed at screaming or, singing aggressively. And we were doing a song, and my voice just like flipped, and there was nothing, like, it just, nothing came out. And I remember I like ran out into the hallway and found a water fountain, tried to drink stuff as fast as I could. We had like 2 more songs or whatever.
Right.
And I remember that being that, like,
Encore.
that was pretty scary.
But other than that, it was well received.
Yeah.
So probably the
You know,
anxiety you had this sort of like conceptual attachment to that where you're like, well, I worried my ass off and it went okay. So that's what I need to do every time.
and I feel like that, you know, when we talk about depression and anxiety, and how they're typically a crutch, or they're a thing that hinders us, I think to a certain level it can be beneficial, because, especially as a player, when I get asked to do something, the fear or the anxiety of doing a bad job compels me to work really, really hard to get things as, like, locked in as I can possibly manage. So in that sense, it it was a motivator. It was a thing that I used to further my career. It propelled me to be willing to do things I probably wouldn't feel comfortable doing otherwise.
Fear is intensely inspirational, I'd
I
say.
wish, it's fear and failure. Those are the things that, like, we learn the most from.
Yeah.
The more mistakes I make, I wish it wasn't like that. I wish I could be like, this success brought me so much information. It didn't. I can just not worry for 10 seconds until the next thing comes up.
Of
But you
course.
fail at something, you've got all the data points. You know exactly where, it gives you way more information. And I just wish I wasn't so stubborn about it. That was the only the only way
It's
that worked.
so much harder to look at something that was a success, recognize the things that made it a success, really success, like accurately, because
Yeah.
who knows what makes a particular thing successful? we all think we know something, and there are people lining up to tell you what will make you successful. But at the end of the day, the recipe is a moving target. Like that page of the
Yeah.
book is changing all the time. It's just like, I don't know what page it's on.
Well, I also think that it requires a level of gratitude that a lot of people aren't like. That's not necessarily a gear people have, where you can look at something that went well, and just like feel the satisfaction and just be grateful for all the things that happened to lead to that point. I feel like those moments are fleeting, and it's just hard.
Yeah.
It's easier, to just be like, yeah, that was great, on to the next thing, which of course failure doesn't give you that luxury, but
Do you think that
success does.
that's exclusive to creative people, or do you think that innately humans are more motivated by failures just because of the way that civilization has evolved and grown?
I think it's very primal, because it's the same thing with an animal. You go up and you try something and something bad happens. Well, you don't do that thing anymore. I think it's just for us, we have to hit the brick wall to kind of realize, oh, maybe I need to try this differently.
Right.
Because otherwise, we go with the path of least resistance.
I wish that I did that more.
Hmm.
I will pull out the machete before I go down the well-worn path almost every time.
I definitely have that. I've got that in me also. Just the
What do you think that is?
subversive.
Ah,
It's in me, it's the insecurity. You I guess feel like people know you think people think they know better than you do. And so even if you know the thing that they're telling you is probably like the smart thing to do, there's just that little thing in you is like, I don't like the fact that you're telling me that.
there's
And
probably some
you
of
just want to
that.
bristle against it.
There's probably some of that in there. I also just like the idea of bushwhacking. Because
That's cool.
you might get to the same destination with a
And
bunch
then
of
you get this new path that other people can follow.
with a bunch of more scratches, with bites. How long did you play with your youth group band, and when did you transition into like, all right, we're playing clubs now. I'm gonna go do this other thing.
Yeah. So in my case, we played through high school, and in my world, like everybody went to college, and most of the people that I knew went to two specific colleges and basically just started 13th grade with, the same group of people that we were in high school with. I was like, So I went to school in
You got the
Murfreesboro,
machete.
Tennessee. Yeah, kind of. It was like, I was like, I want to go to a school where I know nobody. I just want to start fresh and figure out who this person is. So I went to Middle Tennessee State University, which is right outside of Nashville, and they had a music business program. So, and I landed in Nashville right around fall of 2000, and there was this really vibrant DIY community in Nashville at that time. And you have all these people who are going to school to learn how to, play the industry game. And then there's this whole population of miscreants that were like, well, we're not going to do that. And so it was fun because we were learning all of these really valuable lessons with also having like an industry background. So like, DIY, that community is all about grassroots marketing and getting in people's faces and being willing to do the work because you don't have a team. So you got to figure out how to do it. And that scrappiness is still something that I use. And, so for me, I was hesitant to start a project because I had done this thing and felt like I probably thought, like, compared to the people that I was around, because again, I was in Nashville, a bunch of really talented people, I may not have had the confidence to put myself out there like that. But I had a friend who played bass in a band with a kid that he grew up with and just kind of got tired of it. And so he was like, hey, you should go hang out with Derek and see if you want to play bass for them, and I wasn't a bass player at the time, I was a a guitarist, so there's like everybody had a guitar player. Like if you want to be a guitar player in Nashville, like it sucks because there's just so many of them.
The person pumping your gas could play circles around you, guaranteed.
100%.
Yeah.
That's not an exaggeration, but bass players were kind of a commodity. So I picked up bass and I started playing with this group, and it was a 3-piece, and the guitar player Derek was this incredibly prolific writer, and he was a guy who was my age, like obsessed with Kurt Cobain. So everything very much had that kind of that sensibility and that kind of just melancholy to it, but also really well written. And you end up being in this group that has 50, 60, 80 songs. And so you can put these really crazy, set lists together, and you're never playing more than 30 minutes. So you can really like play a bunch of different things. And it was just great. We really built this working relationship where, if he needed a verse written, I could like jump in there and do it. And because there was only 2 of us really who were singing, there was lots of harmony, lots of counterpoint. Like you're learning all of these things about playing with other people, and inevitably all of this theory that you just kind of accumulate as you kind of experience it. And that was the group that I was in through college. We put out a couple of EPs, and the highlight of my career at that point is we got to do a showcase at the Exit Inn in Nashville. That was like a big deal.
Yeah.
Because we would normally play at the end across the street, which is a much smaller room. It sounds great. It's an awesome place to play. But yeah, playing at the Exit Inn was that was a big deal.
Is the end is that in a strip mall, or was it back then? Is it? I think.
So the Rock Block in West Nashville is the Exit Inn is on one side, and across the street there's like a pizza place, a bar called the Gold Rush, and then the end's kind of like tucked away in the back.
Got it. Around that time, in 2000, I made my first trip to Nashville.
It was a very different city back then.
Oh yeah. I went to the Station Inn for Bluegrass Jam Night, just to be a spectator, and it blew my mind because you could kind of look around the room and see you probably are not a music professional. You are just a person who's very, very, very good at music, and you happen to live here. You, guy playing the steel guitar and shredding and with the Kurt Cobain haircut. You are a session guy, and sure as shit, I saw that guy on, the Country Music Awards show playing with a mega artist. But it was a game-changing event. The next time I went to Nashville, I played there with a Japanese country singer who was very passionate guy, but not very good.
There's a lot of those out in that area.
It was incredible, absolutely incredible.
It was a crazy town to work in, but it's also it's really frustrating because outside of this kind of little group of like-minded musicians, there's just people are too busy trying to get their own thing off the ground. It's hard to find a crowd in a city like that because there's so much going on.
You're playing to musicians.
Exactly. If you're playing to anybody.
Right.
And the contrast is so stark. After spending 4 or 5 years in Nashville trying to get anything going, to moving back to Atlanta and starting to get plugged in the the original music scene down here, and it's just like night and day. You have like a population of people who want to consume music,
right,
versus people who are too busy playing it to enjoy it. And if they're there, they're just kind of like picking your set apart, the thing that musicians do best.
The light bulb thing.
Sit in the back with them.
How many musicians, right? Does it take
Yeah.
to?
I thought it was the singer. How many lead singers does it take to screw a light bulb? Well, one, he just holds it up and the world revolves around him. But yeah, no, the other one's like, well, it's one guy and then five guys standing around going, I could do it better.
Yeah, totally. Look at that. He sucks.
Yeah.
Did you
Can't believe
ever?
he did that.
Did you ever play on what is it on Broadway?
No,
No.
they're just because I feel I was in. I appreciate the things that I learn in that community, but as a player, I really wish I had been a bit more willing to play the game of that Nashville, had. I just wasn't. I was too busy going like, oh, I'm doing this and pursuing. I'm an artist,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna, all the things that I talk about now are the like antithesis of what I, believed myself to be at that age.
I felt a lot of those same ways as a 20 and early 30 something, thinking, why would I bother playing cover songs? Lame.
Yeah.
Lame.
Giving up,
Those players down on Broadway, West Broad, whatever it is, Lower Broadway, up, I don't know what the hell it is. They are boldly talented.
Yeah.
Insane.
And it's ridiculous. 2 weeks ago, I interviewed a guy named Tyson Leslie, who is like, he's like the Kevin Bacon of that kind of world.
Yeah.
Because he knows everybody.
Right.
And he's currently doing like, he's on like cruise number 3, where he did Shiprocked, and then he's doing like some Moody Blues cruise right now. He'll be gone for like the next 2 or 3 weeks. And when he's not doing that, he's the keyboardist and road manager for Vixen. And when he's not doing that, he's on Broadway 6 nights a week.
Right.
Playing 3 different instruments, just depending on, what they need.
These kind of people are just, it's insane, the skill sets.
Because being a guitar player in that town is not enough.
Right.
Because if you go, oh, I'm a guitar player, like, well, do you play steel?
Right. Can you
play
sing?
dobro?
How many octaves?
Can you play mandolin? Yeah. You have to be able to do all of that stuff. And that's, I mean, picking up a bass was kind of my first lesson with that. Is like, well, I can do this. And I feel, as far as like sideman stuff that I get asked, the thing that we had to cancel last night for was a bass gig, just because I had a bass and I know how to play it, and
right.
I don't consider myself a bass player, but I've got enough of a a toolbox that I can go out and work on either instrument.
Right. So is a multi-instrumental talent not an expectation of a bassist in Nashville, generally speaking?
Oh no, you either have to be like that guy.
You have to be Pino Palladino or fuck off.
Basically. Yeah. So you either need to be a complete stud, or you need to have like 15 other things that you're good at.
God. And making a ragu sauce is probably not a qualifier.
Nope.
That's unfortunate. I really was starting to see my path forward.
It's a tough town, man.
Yeah.
And you just have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because it's not changing for you. You just have to you either adapt or you go home.
Yeah. And so you went home.
I did.
You went to back to Atlanta. Did you? I mean,
Yep.
Did you grow up in Atlanta, or did you grow outside of Atlanta?
I lived there longer than anywhere else. I spent some time in North Carolina, spent some time in New Hampshire.
Oh.
But like my dad got relocated. I was probably kindergarten, first grade, and lived here, then moved to Nashville, moved back.
Yeah.
So yeah, like my entire family unit, brothers and sisters, mom and dad, probably less than 15 miles in a radius around my house, which is pretty cool.
That is great.
But like we all went away and we just kind of like came back. It's a cool place to live.
What was coming back like? You said you felt some relief about just the sort of stress of trying to get traction musically.
Well, I would say it was humiliating to a degree because you went to go do this thing and it didn't happen. So you were kind of coming back and trying to figure yourself out. Um, Once I got plugged in with like a solo artist through the guy who was managing him and worked with him for a little bit, and it just wasn't a good fit because again, you have to have that kind of mentality and sensibility that like you're there to do a job, and it's not about you, it's not about how cool you look or what you're wearing on stage. It's like your job is to execute this thing, and they don't want your artistic flair. They want you to execute the thing that Rick Beato recorded
Right.
on the record, which is a true, like the first artist that I played with, Rick Beato produced his album, so I was playing Rick Beato parts for the most part.
Pretty good player.
He's all right.
Yeah.
We like him.
Yeah.
But then that I got fired from that gig, rightfully so, because I wasn't a good fit, and got plugged in with a group that was much more my sensibility.
Let's talk about the getting fired really quick.
Okay.
I've been fired from a gig.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough to only have been fired from one gig, but
yeah,
I wasn't happy in the band anyway, but the fact that I didn't get to quit was a massive thorn in my side, and I used it as fuel to motivate me.
Yeah.
Will you tell me how getting fired felt?
In the moment it was well, yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, and I feel like the guy whose band it was, said in so many words, I'm letting you go to do the thing that you're good at. I'm giving you the opportunity to pursue, something that's going to be more fulfilling. And I feel like I don't say like you're doing me any favors, when in reality he 100% was. And full circle moment, 2 or 3 years later, when I'm established with this group, we get we're on the same bill as him and his band, and it was true. We were both way better off,
right?
And it was the right move, and good on him for seeing it and being willing to do the hard thing.
Did you address that, or was it unnecessary?
I have talked about it on in some of the videos, because I talk a lot about most of the stuff that we're talking about making mistakes. Most of the content that I create as far as YouTube stuff is me talking about, here's the thing that I screwed up on, and here's why you shouldn't do the same thing that I did. So maybe you'll save yourself some heartache.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Oh yeah. But also, here's what I did, just so I can show you why you shouldn't do it.
Right.
You just have to willing to be vulnerable and let people know. And I shared that with him, because we still kind of keep in touch. We'll chat every now and then. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
You need to go through those things.
Good. And so what did you go do?
So I joined that group. It was a female fronted kind of pop punk group, and I was with them for 8 years. I was whole hog. We got to open up for a bunch of national acts and toured around a little bit. Got to shake Butch Vig's hand. That was kind of cool. And we made some records and played some shows, and it went as far as I'm probably going to get in that world, where you're talking with labels and, kind of things are kind of moving and shaking, but ultimately the group just couldn't sustain the pressure.
Right.
Because you're with somebody for 8 years. It's a, warts and all, it's a relationship. And, sometimes people just don't get along. And we just kind of hit that saturation point where it's like, if we're going to go where this is going to go, we're going to have to do X, Y, and Z, or we just need to go, you know what? I think we're good. And I think we all just kind of decided the latter. And that was that. So
that's a long amount of time to have to decide that you've reached the point of diminishing return. How did that feel? 8 years.
You know, I feel like by the end of it, things were so tense that when it ultimately kind of went down, you know, it's a little bit of relief, but like it affected me. I didn't play live for probably almost a full year after that. I just like it had left such a, you know, impression that I just avoided it. I wasn't interested.
Right.
It was just a matter of kind of finding the right opportunity, kind of moving on.
I almost lost it there.
That's all.
I'm not, you know what? I bought a cough button.
Yeah. The cough drop.
No, you know, like the little button to,
Yeah.
I never hooked it up. No, it was one of those things. Someone was like, you need to get one of these. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I'll buy one. And then I was like, fuck that thing. And put it in the drawer.
Yeah. I've never used one. We just use the eggplant trick, you know.
The eggplant, that's a good gag. Man.
It's been very effective.
What did you do during that year that you were not playing music?
I had kind of, in the meantime, while I was doing all of that work, I also got a job working for Apple. And there was a period of time where they needed trainers.
Yeah.
And in order to get that job, you had to be certified in 2 or 3 of their pro apps, which is Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, and like Aperture, which is, it doesn't exist anymore, but it's like photography.
Yeah.
And so they paid me to learn to use Logic. So I was really like, I'm Apple certified in Logic Pro. So I was writing stuff and producing, and I kind of had the impression that I was going to, you know, put out a solo project or build a project around myself. But finding people that you can trust enough to kind of bring on board just never really materialized. It didn't ever happen. But I got, you know, after feeling like it was time to get back out there and that I wanted to keep playing, I was just trying to find like a good opportunity, just trying to get back out there, finding like a group of people that were kind of into the things that I was into. And I was living in Candler Park in Atlanta, which is right next to Little Five Points, this kind of funky, artsy part of town. And my buddy, Mark Donnells, who at that point he had played with Brand New Immortals and was on Butch Walker's first solo tour and that kind of thing.
He's pretty talented.
He's a Berkeley grad, and he's
Butch.
outrageous. Oh, well, him too. Butch, I mean, if you want to talk about like the Pound Cake video got me into playing guitar, Butch Walker made me like a musician 100%. The Marvelous Three,
he's an inspirational pick talent,
hugely impactful
pick flicking talent, inspirational pick flicking talent.
I still have those tricks because just seeing them. And you know, so I mean, Hey Album kind of went out like it was 97. I was 16 years old. I mean, I was like, and them being an Atlanta artist, like they were hometown boys.
Yeah.
And it was crazy and was super inspiring. And the wild thing is that over the course of my career, I've played with Jace and Slug from the Marvelous Three like hundreds of times at this point. I worked with Jace, like we worked at the same company.
Yeah.
And it's just wild that like these guys are my heroes, and they're like, you know, we text every now and then. It's like, it's awesome.
The world is weird.
It is.
Right?
It's crazy.
It's a crazy world when you make friends with people who, you know, you had on your wall as a kid or whatever.
Absolutely.
But all that stuff, people are accessible, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Jennifer Batten DM'd us about doing an interview. Like, do you want to interview me? I was like, wait, what?
You were like, yes.
Yeah, let's do that right now.
Right.
Because, and again, 10 years old, 8 years old. That Bad World tour that she was on, like,
forget it.
Guitar player I was very conscious of,
right? Just
because I was such a huge Michael Jackson fan. So yeah, that was a huge moment for me. But so like circling back, so my buddy Mark worked at a guitar store that was right by my house, and he was in a group called Yacht Rock Review. They were these guys that were doing this smooth AM radio thing. in the Atlanta area. And now they're doing like theaters now, national touring act. They're opening for Kenny Loggins on his farewell tour.
Wow.
Um, but they were looking, I was like, hey, are they looking for subs? I was like, oh yeah, I know. I think we got some, like some guitar spots. I was like, well, what about for singing? It's like, well, you'd have to come down and, they were doing like a standing thing every Thursday night, right down the road at this place called the Dark Horse. And, so they were like, come down there and we'll have you sit in and do a couple of songs. And the songs they asked me to do were Reminiscing by Little River Band and Hold the Line, because they wanted to see if you can hit all the notes and do all of that.
Right.
And so I got plugged in with them. And so I was on this like yacht rock journey for a couple of years. And they like kind of as their star was exploding, I got to be in kind of some small part, in that world, and learned a ton, and was in, the least talented guy in the room every single time. And just like really, again, scared to fail, willing to put in as much work as possible to do a good job, and learned a ton. And
how much did you learn about songs and gigging from playing in a cover band? I have a similar trajectory to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a ton when I started doing covers.
Well, it's the attention to detail. It's the things you have to notice, because if you don't notice, somebody's going to point them out to you. So, listen to it with a critical ear, and figure out, when you're listening to a song, like maybe you've got a particular harmony line that you prefer to sing because it just hits your sensibilities. But when you're doing a gig like that, you've got two vocalists in two versions of that group, and none of the stacks are the same. Right. So you don't have to learn, I Can't Go For That. You have to learn 7 different parts of I Can't Go For That, depending on, who you're sitting in for. So you learn, every little nook and cranny of a recording. You have to be a student of it. You have to be able to execute it like as close to flawless as possible.
I listened to music absolutely 100% differently after I started. I played in a live karaoke band.
Mm-hmm.
This songbook was almost 600 songs, and no notes on stage, no music. There were lyrics and a click track and a little bit of backing track, usually some keyboards.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like on hip hop songs, like when we're Rockin' Pony or Big Butts or whatever that song's called, then there's 808 and all kinds of stuff going on. But for the most part, and really wildly varied.
Well, and on the flip side of that, around the same time that was going on, there was this thing in Atlanta called Metalsome Monday, and it was heavy metal live band karaoke.
Awesome.
And so every Monday night, we would go down to the same place, the Dark Horse, and you'd have this band of just like monsters playing these songs like note for note, and just the wildest song list you can think of. And because it was on a Monday night, it was like an industry thing. So you'd get hot shots coming through town, who'd come and sit in, or it was just a crazy night, because you're out at 3 a.m. on a Monday, hanging out with a bunch of dudes in leather jackets, and just it was awesome.
Yeah.
So, but again, it was, my standards were very high because I was exposed to really high operating groups where attention to detail and execution was like paramount. Right. So that was my benchmark as far as I was concerned. That's what you had to do. So
what year is this that we're talking?
Like, I'm talking 2005 till around 2012. I mean, Metalsome's still happening. They were only doing it 1 night a week. Now they're doing it like 5 nights a week. It's like a full like economy down here.
Really?
It's
like they could open a bar.
They do. Well, the 10 High is their bar. Like, they've taken it over. That's what happens there.
Right.
So they're the heavy metal karaoke bar. And it was like, that was my home base for, once I moved back to Nashville, that was like, from Nashville, that was a place that I, kind of worked my way into the music scene through.
Right.
because I could sing a bunch of high stuff. So that was a good skill to have in that world.
For sure. What's your go-to?
So the first song that I did, because again, I wanted to make sure that people knew that I was there and you needed to pay attention to me, was I Believe in a Thing Called Love by the Darkness.
So, there's a lot of high singing in that one.
Yeah. And it's a song that if you can pull it off it's a hard one to forget. It's an experience to behold.
People eat it up.
Yeah. So that was kind of my introduction to that world. But yeah, we do like, you do Whole Lot of Love or Still the Night, Whitesnake.
Yeah.
That was a big one.
All the high singing.
Oh yeah.
Wow, band would pull off Still of the Night.
Oh yeah. With the keyboard break and everything.
And the big guitar solo. That guitar solo is
100%.
Unbelievable. John Sykes is unbelievably good.
Yeah.
Under-celebrated guitar hero.
In Atlanta, there's a guy named Brian Smith. He goes by Smitty. And he was that guy. Just monstrous player. And the keyboard player is a guy named Brandon Still, who's actually the touring keyboardist for Blackberry Smoke now.
Oh, wow.
He went from that gig to Blackberry Smoke.
Pretty good band.
Yeah. Another more hometown boys.
Pretty good band. You are still, and you still have a cover band. Seems like pretty high functioning. And what was the gig that you filled in? Can you care about talking about that?
Yeah. So I operate, basically it's 4 different groups, but like mostly the same lineup of people. So primarily an 80s thing. That's what we kind of cut our teeth on, and that's what we're most well known for. We do a 90s version of it because, of course, there's a top 40 thing where you kind of take all of these and add some contemporary stuff. You would do that for like a wedding or whatever. And then I started a pop punk emo one just because I was one of those Warped Tour kids, and I just wanted to have that as an outlet.
And but good to stay ahead of the curve too. That's coming next.
Well, yeah. So like if you're talking about the nostalgia curve, like that's, we're right on the cusp of it. So the thing that happened last night was it was a corporate event for the Atlanta Falcons. I didn't know that until like day of, but it was some buddies of mine who were actually I knew through playing original music. They have a 90s group, and because of scheduling and stuff, their bass player wasn't available. So I had filled in with them before and just kind of stepped in with 24 hours notice, and we played for an hour and check cleared, and that's it.
Oh, that's not so bad. Play for an hour is pretty good. What about these gigs where you've got 3-hour long sets because it's a casino or it's a corporate event where who knows what, or it's a wedding. There's a lot of scenarios that I just had no idea even existed. But I can tell you that financially, my life was much more sound in the realm of being a musician when I chose to go hybrid and tour and indulge in playing in cover bands. And it's a good way to keep your chops up.
For sure. And in my world, because of the way that I want to operate, I don't do those kinds of gigs unless there's some sort of like, extraneous circumstance. Because I advance all of our stuff. Like I have a contract, and in our world it's 275s. That's the way that we want to operate.
Yeah.
We're not going to play more than that. And if we are, overtime rate is 150 per player per hour. So, we can do whatever you want us to do, but, we're going to make sure that, because I don't want to be up there for longer than that. And I know that as a vocalist and, as just a musician, I can give you a really great show at a certain level of intensity for that period of time. Outside of that, it's a different world.
Right.
But I built that contract over, the course of a bunch of years, and, you do something and something would go sideways, and you tweak it, and, you do another gig and the weather was like a whole nightmare. And so you tweak your weather clause. And so I actually got this pretty rock solid contract. I actually sell it now, because I don't think people understand how, like, as far as being a musician, we spend all of his time trying to master the technical components, and nobody understands that it almost really doesn't matter how good you are, because in order to get yourself out there and market yourself and be as good of an executor as you can be, yeah, you have to have the technical ability, but you have to be a good marketer, and you have to understand how, how payments work and how the business is structured. And nobody's really teaching you that, when you're going in to work on, your Mixolydian scales for, for practice that week. Nobody tells you how to be successful at it. They just tell you, well, here's how you play it. And I know so many great players who are terrible business people or are just hard to be around because they don't understand the nuts and bolts of the business.
Right.
And so that's ultimately what I'm trying to do, is be like, all right, cool, you can be good. Now let's figure out how to actually make this an income stream for you instead of a really expensive hobby.
How many times over the course of your 25 years of gigging have you been on a gig where someone that was just like infinitely talented, but so hard, and you hear they're on the gig and you roll your eyes, you're just like, oh God.
Like, when you say that description, like that face pops up. I know,
right?
I've got so many of them.
Just like, doesn't matter that you're that good because you're a jerk.
I'll take good hangover chops any day of the week.
Right.
It's so like, and
unless Still Other Night's coming up, then I want you to play the shit out of that solo.
Right. If we're talking about a one-off and we're on and gone, I can get through it.
Yeah.
I mean, but that song's really long. You're talking almost 7 minutes, so you still got to take that into account because you're up there.
Hey, can we?
For a while.
So you do a '90s version? Can we talk about this song? What is? Because one thing that I didn't realize before I started playing covers was there are songs that are amazing to listen to, like "Heaven and Hell" by Black Sabbath, and the list is pretty long. But the one song that sticks out to me that is an incredible song, and I love to hear it, but I hate to play it, is "Plush."
Yeah.
So the tempo is plodding, and it's really easy to get lost in those breaks, and you're like, is this the third chorus? I don't know. We've been playing for a minute and a half, and you're in the first verse. I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, it's also like when I was very little when that song came out, so I keep thinking about that chord during the choruses and how hard it was to hold that down, because you're at the first fret and you're just like crunching your hand as hard as it'll go. But you were talking about STP filling in on a bass gig. The Interstate Love Song was on the list, and you want to talk about really talented guys. The DeLeo brothers are
incredible.
It's incredible. But if you're trying to play their stuff, they're busy ass parts. And so you have to make sure that you got enough of it and you can improvise enough to get around the stuff that you may not know note for note. And then, the drummer, his meter's a little off. And so you start that thing 15 clips faster than it is on the record. And so now you're trying to get all the parts in and you're playing it at like, some crazy breakneck speed. It was, I think we finished that song in like 90 seconds last night. It was rough.
Even though that band rarely sounds like Led Zeppelin, the sort of template of how their songs fit together is very Zeppelin-esque. The bass moves around, it's melodic, it drives a lot, and the chords are very interesting. Sounds like alternate tunings a lot of the time, but I don't think he's a big alternate tunings guy. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, because as a person who's played a fair amount of them, like I've never had to tune a guitar differently to play any of their stuff.
I think he's just a really interesting player. Great band. Good songs.
Yeah, they the Jaleel Brothers did a record called Army of Anyone, with Richard Patrick and Ray Lucier, and that album was phenomenal. Just the when you had like these absolute beast musicians and then Bob Ezrin, kind of at the helm, it goes like it's out there, but it's awesome. Super, super good.
Are there any other tunes that you've come across where they're real crowd pleasers? Because that song, people love it. People picked it every night at karaoke.
So, as an 80s band, like we've got tons of those. And the sad reality is that I don't sing most of them. My wife who's also a vocalist.
Oh, nice.
She gets to do all the really fun ones. Hit Me With Your Best Shot,
right.
Heaven Is a Place on Earth, I Think We're Alone Now. Like those are the ones, because ultimately, if you're playing covers, you're in the entertainment business, and if you want people on the dance floor, you got to do stuff that ladies want to dance to.
Right.
And they love themselves just an 80s ladies rager. Like they just want to get out there and just scream along. The closest thing that you can get to that in a 90s kind of angle, at least where we are, is Man, I Feel Like a Woman by Shania Twain. You start that, I mean, it's game over.
There's a weird turnaround in that song too, isn't there?
There's like a double stop before the solo break.
Right.
You get again, it's like one of those weep weep, like just.
It's a weird song. There's there are a couple of unconventional things in it.
Mutt Lange.
Right.
Guy's a genius.
God, did he ever do anything?
No, I mean, he had that one record, and then that other one record.
Right.
And that other.
All the best ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's no big. It's just Hysteria. That's all.
Right.
Even if it was just Hysteria.
Right.
What if you were the guy who produced Hysteria and you did nothing else? That's fine.
I would rest easy. My head would hit the pillow every night and I'd be fine.
100%. But he was like, maybe I'll try something different.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Anything else?
I don't know, man. My whole ethos is to try to help people and share things that I've learned and be helpful where I can, but also be willing to like kind of stick it to the internet guitar culture as a whole.
Right.
Because sometimes
I love that you say you're like, I don't practice.
Yeah. I have a shirt that says I don't practice. Like, yeah.
I also love that I said anything else and you were like, oh, he means just like with my life. I was talking about songs.
I don't know. I thought we were wrapping up. I'm trying to convey my ethos and my raison d'etre to you,
And I love it. I love that.
But yeah, no, as far as like, so yeah, Don't Stop Believing is the one we always end with.
Right.
Because how could you not? And then maybe you'll throw in, you gotta, fight for your right to party.
You're doing Wanted Dead or Alive. Or are you doing that or Living on a Prayer?
We're doing Living on a Prayer typically.
That's a fun bass line.
We're in this lane.
Right.
You want to be in this lane.
Got it.
You don't want to, we'll do Every Breath You Take as kind of like a couples only skate, like maybe like a third of the way into the night.
You're doing some NXS?
We've done, what do we, New Sensation. You're going to get that one probably.
Sure.
Duran Duran, we're going to do Hunger Like the Wolf.
Outfield. You've got that range.
Yep. Yeah, we do Your Love. Pour Some Sugar on Me. You might get Panama.
Uh-huh.
Kind of depends on how the night's going.
Nice.
If things are getting.
Are you playing guitar on that or singing?
I've done both, but if I can help it, I'll try and only have to do one. But push comes to shove.
If you were going to give someone, and I know you give plenty of advice, if you were going to give someone like I live in the middle of farms, so I recently made a friend that has a house just down the road who has been musically active over the years and has a music industry job now, but we're pals now. So I have like a music buddy, but I live far. Like I can, in 45 minutes, I can be in Albany, but it's not a real
Yeah.
cultural center. There's not a lot of
Right.
nightlife there. And it's a student, you know, it's like college town. So it's not like the olds are going out to boogie, oogie, oogie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but let's say you were giving advice to an imaginary person right now, me, about either starting, because I always have a terrible idea, starting
Hmm.
a cover band with a concept, or getting involved or joining one. What would you say? What would you say? What would you?
So if we're talking about like I'm not in a community and there's not like an obvious kind of like place where either these kinds of bands are performing or there's just not a network of people. I'm very much a personal branding person and a social media person because you can if you know how to present yourself really uh, kind of stand out and garner more attention. You know, we ultimately like as musicians we want our show, you know, we want our show to sell well, but we're limited, you know, by our kind of radius, you know, as far as we can
Sure.
travel. Whereas the internet, you know, is everywhere. And so if you are looking to find somebody and it's not obvious, try to establish yourself as a person who is good at this particular thing and just kind of put yourself out there and people will reach out to you because I've definitely seen really great guitar players on Instagram, found out that they were local and just DM them like, hey, are you looking for work?
Right.
So it's something that I do.
Sure.
So you should do that
Oh
also.
yeah.
You know, get a little interface that plugs into your phone. They're like $30 now,
Right.
and start making TikToks.
I make some. You said you use Final Cut. You still use Final Cut?
I do.
Man,
That's how I cut all of my videos. Still
you know,
got the free
you're
version.
going to be.
They haven't updated it since.
Is that right?
They haven't changed like the version, so it's still like just 10. I got Final Cut 10 when it came out. I was still working for Apple. That was 2009,
Yeah.
2010. It's still that same. It's still Final Cut 10, and so I got the free one, and they have updated it, you know, regularly ever since. So I never bought it.
Wow.
I
Good
did
for
buy
you.
Logic. I didn't have to buy Final Cut.
Right. Well, you're sorry that I've got your number because I just learned how to make compound videos. So
Yeah.
that was that was the big, you know, that was a revelation for me.
I learned how to J cut, and I was like, oh, like I've like unlocked
I don't
something.
even know what that means.
Basically, you trim the video, but you leave the audio tail. So as you're ending a word, the next clip is starting.
Oh,
So
does the
instead
audio
of there being like,
overlap?
yeah, the audio overlaps, and so the video does also. So instead of finishing a sentence and then starting a sentence, you're ending one as you're starting the other. So your transitions are a lot smoother, and things just flow faster.
How the fuck do you do that?
I I'll hit you up after this.
I never
And
even heard
it's
that term, and that sounds like a game changer.
it definitely will make your final products look way better
Pro. Wow.
for sure.
See,
Yeah.
look at that. I just learned, I just got some deep knowledge from you. If we want to send people to learn from you,
Yeah.
where are you laying it down?
Man, I am all over the place. If you want to see me make fun of guitar culture and old dudes, you can find me on TikTok.
Yeah.
All of this is under my full name because I've got a very common name. So it's Adam Patrick Johnson is my main handle on pretty much every like major platform. So TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Adam Patrick Johnson. On YouTube, I've got a personal channel which is more focused on content creation and not like music so much.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing is Cover Band Confidential. It's the podcast and YouTube channel I've been doing for the past, 3-4 years. I'm actually, as soon as we're wrapped up here, I'm going to start my podcast episode, right from the spot. And our whole thing is trying to show people how to make good money playing music. And there's lots of ways of doing that. And covers are a part of it, but also being, knowing the ins and outs of being a hired gun. That's, to me, that's the same job. Ultimately, somebody's hiring you to play music a certain way. And, so all of that stuff I think is relevant. And So you can check out coverbandconfidential.com. You can check out Cover Band Confidential on the podcast platform of your choice, or check out the YouTube channel. It's where it's all happening.
Nice.
And I've also got a personal website, adampatrickjohnson.com. Sorry.
Awesome. I should, and we're at the end here, but I should thank Alex Oxher for introducing us.
100%.
For introducing us and suggesting that you sing a cover, and you picked an absolute banger. And nailed it. You knocked it out of the park. Working for the Weekend.
Right, my wheelhouse, man.
Is that one that you do in your band?
Yep.
Nice.
Absolutely.
So you didn't have to woodshed.
I had it down cold. Nah. I did have to, like, after you do a song long enough, you do have to kind of think about, like, are those the words? You just kind of get used to singing a thing. It's not always right. So I did spot check because I knew if I messed the lyrics up, somebody would have something to say about it. So I did look them over.
Do you pay attention to what other cover bands are doing? Just as in sort of industry?
Well, yeah, because I mean, that's kind of where we are. And if we're doing, like, we do coaching for groups that are trying to do certain things. And so, yeah, we have a general idea of, the kind of thing that bigger groups are doing and how they're being successful. We just ultimately want to try to reverse engineer that stuff, or kind of figure out what the components are so that we can share it with other people so that they can, build their own projects.
Have you ever seen a good mashup band?
I feel like every cover band worth their salt's got a mashup, something that they put together that kind of works. Right. There's a group out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa called the Pork Tornadoes, and they do some really good mashups. And yeah, there's tons of groups out there. I couldn't pick one out, off the top of my head, but I think it's a component of what you have to be able to do.
Right.
Current favorite mashup is singing the first verse and chorus of All Star over Semi Charm Life, because the structure and the key's the same. That's a good one. That's a free tip. You guys can take that one. Take that into your town. You play it. People think you're a genius.
I've seen so many of those clips from the Rick Rubin, Paul McCartney thing where he's like, "You want to listen to some tunes?" And he pushes the thing, and whatever Smash Mouth song comes on.
Smash Mouth, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I was.
Is it All Star?
I love that whole bit. Yeah,
I've seen a few of those.
But I'm a Smash Mouth apologist, man. I think they were a really unique group. I think their songwriting's awesome. Walking on the Sun is like,
I loved that song when it came out. I was like, this has all the right vibes. It's got, like, I was playing in a retro pop band at the time, and I was like, this is good. This is smart, well produced music.
Yeah.
There's a reason it got huge.
Yeah, no shade to Smash Mouth. We are Smash Mouth apologists in my world. But
that video is still amazing. It's my favorite of all of the videos that borrow that clip.
That's funny.
It was really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I wish that I would have paced this a little differently, but we're there. We're at the place. I sure like you. You're great.
The text exchange has been because I mean, like, we kind of got introduced. It was mid-pandemic, so it was like any sort of like-minded human beings to connect with was
right.
Very welcome. And yeah, man,
it took us a while to make it happen, but it did. How did you meet Alex?
He was my artist rep when I was endorsed by Orange.
Oh, I used to be endorsed by Orange back when I stood.
My RV.
Back when I used to stand next to Duff, he liked me a lot more.
Yeah.
That's how
I found that as well. I got a pity endorsement, but it worked nonetheless.
Yeah.
And we're now at the point in our lives where if I can help him out, I'll help him out. And if he can help me out, we just kind of.
He's great. He's a funny guy.
Best. Yeah, we interviewed him for the podcast, and he was hilarious.
Yeah,
we actually our Patreon increased exponentially because we took all the stuff that he shouldn't have said
and put it
put it behind the Patreon paywall because he spilled all kinds of tea. It was really funny.
Good. Did he have a couple sodas in him? It was pandemic time.
You know, I will
Who knows?
I won't make that claim
Yeah.
in his absence, but
Good.
you know, it could have been.
Yeah. Could do.
It was great.
Just a couple more questions for you, just
Mhm.
like back end technical stuff. Can you send me a
Yep.
couple of high res images? A fella like
Yep.
yourself probably has some stuff like that laying around, right?
Yep.
Maybe a couple things of you on stage, and
Hmm.
if you care, one not on stage.
I've got like a little folder that I've been sending about.
I knew that you would. And then the last thing is, can you put together a Spotify playlist for me of 13 songs?
Yes.
And there's no rules to this playlist. It's my guest playlist. It'll go up the week of the episode, which should be next week.
Okay.
If there is some music, if there is a song of your own, I do ask people to include at least one song of their own, or a
Yep.
band that they've played with, or something to that effect.
Can do.
Otherwise, there's not really a rule. It's your playlist. Could be your favorites, could be your current favorites, the 10 that made you want to do it. It could be the playlist I posted last night was my guest Angus. It was all bands that we mentioned in our conversation.
Cool.
He
Yeah, I'll definitely. I've got my head spinning now.
I love
Trying to
it.
think like, yeah. You'll get it tomorrow. Enthusiastically.
Wow. Okay, I love that. I'm gonna kill this.